and welcome to the first live broadcast for the Physicians Helping Attorneys podcast. And I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Armin Feldman.
Hi, Mike, and welcome to our audience. And this live show is our first live show associated, as Mike said, with our podcast, Physicians Helping Attorneys, Helping People, all presented by physicians legal consultants. And for those of you who have not worked with us, Physicians Legal Consultants been around for about 15 years, and we work as medical consultants as opposed to medical experts. And we're working pre-trial, pre-litigation, and we work on the strategic development of medical issues in your cases. And often the missing piece in maximizing case value, future medicals, medical strategies, medical reports, and so forth. We have worked with hundreds of law firms over the past years, all over the country, and have literally, at this point, done thousands of cases.
Of these cases, the cases that prompted me to want to share specific redacted reports, not from here's what we can do, here's how great we are. That's not, this is about wanting to show a specific case. And this is the first one, but as you know, I got really excited and kind of came up with this car crash Wednesday because just by volume, I mean, obviously we handle slip and falls and any type of work injury, workers' comp cases, but car crashes by volume are so common,
Right.
And they result in a whole range of injuries.
Right.
And so one of the biggest questions that I think doesn't get answered in our outreach and kind of marketing of our services is, what do we actually produce?
Right.
And so, but before we do that, okay, this is our first episode, so please bear with us. I think I have the technology figured out, but I also just want to pull up, while if anyone's jumping on, our podcast website, and this is at physicianshelpingattorneys.com, and this is what it looks like. If that's coming through, can you see that, Armin?
Yeah, I can see that, and I think we have 8 or 9 episodes on there now, and there should be an episode every week or two. So please come back and take a look at the take a listen to the podcast.
We keep these episodes about 15 to 20 minutes long. We go through cases. Again, specific cases will probably be a little bit of overlap because we have some really good ones. But this is where, and we're on iTunes, Google, wherever. You can go listen to the podcast if you're jogging, on your way to work, whatever. It's really just a casual way for us to discuss more cases and how we're helping attorneys save time and increase value.
So, Mike, I know that you've got a really great medical summary report related to an auto crash that you did not too long ago. So maybe we should jump right into it.
Let's jump in. Yep, we know time is tight. I should mention, if anyone has, before I do that, if anyone has any questions, I will be trying to monitor the comments. And there is someone who just said they can see us. That's awesome. And then I'm going to be able to put people's comments up on the screen. So please, if you have any questions while we go through the report, pop them in the comment section. I'll check it. And then also, if you need to contact us for any reason, you can email us at comments@physicianshelpingattorneys.com. If you have a case you want to discuss, if you have any comments about the show, anything you like or don't like. And also you can call us at this number, which is the 1-800-208-5138. And that's directly to Armin and I. So you're going to be able to ask us about questions or schedule time to talk about a case. And we love doing that. But the first thing we're going to do, because again, time is important. I want to go through my case of new back pain that was in the environment of pre-existing back pain. So this is a real case that I redacted. I'm going to share my screen. I really like how this looks in this format, Armin. I was telling you how excited I was. And there we go. Can you see it?
Absolutely. Looks great.
Okay. So guys, this is a redacted report. The names look, unredacted. That's just so it flows, but these are all made up names and institutions. but this is a report that I worked on that dealt with back pain in a woman who was, let's see, she was just over 65. So she was, had a longstanding history of chronic back pain. And she was in a crash. She was hit from the side. She was a passenger and taken to the ER. And they diagnosed her with a badly comminuted. And you can see in the reports here, we try to use layman's terminology when we can, a fracture of her left humerus and also a pelvic fracture, and then some neck pain and bilateral knee abrasions.
Hey, Mike, maybe what you should do just very, very briefly is go over how we format this.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you mean that, like, starting out, all the records we review, we give a brief history of the crash, which you can kind of see up here, and then we jump into ongoing medical problems, and then we tackle each medical problem individually. So in this woman, you're going to see low back pain, you're going to see hip pain, shoulder pain. And then we include verbatim notes from her treating doctors. We include a phone interview that we conduct with our attorney's client, with Ms. Johnson in this case. We relate that and create the narrative of her ongoing issues and functional losses. And then we, like I said, build in the verbatim notes. We include peer-reviewed literature where relevant. I'm going to show you guys exactly the papers that I included in this one. And then we offer a kind of our opinion as to the causation, the mechanism of injury, and ultimately what the functional losses are. And then we estimate what future medical care would look like, what it may entail, and what the cost of that future medical care would be. And we include it, and we have a graph at the end.
Right. So in every case, obviously what we're going to do first is talk with the attorney, right? And then we will review the medical records. Then in every case, we always interview your client, typically by phone or by Zoom meeting. Then we'll do whatever medical research that we need to do. That puts us in a position to write the report. And I think it's important to say that then because we have this 30,000 foot view, which we're not just looking at one piece of the elephant, but the entire case, then we will render our own medical opinions with regard to what are the injuries, what are the symptoms, and so forth. And as Mike said, also talk about causation, mechanism of injury, functional loss, and so forth. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I hope that our audience, if this format does or doesn't work for you, please let us know in the comments, because I feel like running through a specific report, which I'm going to jump into now, really illustrates what potential benefit your specific case could glean from this type of report when it comes time to the settlement demand, because we know that 9 out of 10 of your cases do ultimately end up getting settled. And the goal of this is to increase settlement value for you and your client. So,
right. In fact, now some attorneys will use these reports for medical case coordination, but far, far and away, attorneys use these reports as part of their settlement demand letters. And of course, the feedback we're getting over the years is that by including these reports in the settlement demand, that attorneys are in fact settling their cases for better value, less attorney time.
Exactly. All right, let's jump in. So like I said, she is over 65 years old, had this fracture, had a shoulder fracture as well, but was generally kind of did okay. She saw her physicians. She ended up having a surgery done, an ORIF, an open reduction internal fixation of her left hip. And then she went through physical therapy. Her wounds were healed. And then she saw the orthopedic doctor, who said in his notes, "I believe the majority of her symptoms are coming from her lower back. She was seen in pain management, that now they're giving her epidurals. He doesn't believe her limitations from ambulation are due to her acetabular fracture." So the attorney got me involved, not because he needed to prove up that this, the medical care for the fracture was necessary, but the fact that her life had completely changed from her mobility after, due to this back pain and these other complaints that he couldn't necessarily, tie to the fractures sustained. Right. So I even went as far as to say in my report that I agreed with that opinion, and it was unlikely that this acetabular fracture of the hip was likely due to her causing her back symptoms. And it was probably these other things.
So,
So
Mike, I think one of the important things that I'm sure you'll talk about this, but this woman had some baseline back pain symptoms before the auto accident, but she had a radical change in pain, function, the quality of her life. Every aspect of her life was changed. And that's really what the attorney needed some help with.
I jumped ahead a page here, Armin, but you're exactly right. So right here, I highlighted before the crash, she reported back pain more consistent with degenerative changes. She had an MRI. This was 2 years before the crash. It showed spinal stenosis. She walked slowly but independently. And then she stated that her grandchildren would say, I almost walked like a duck. I included that to provide a picture of what she was like before the accident. And she, used to enjoy shopping and walking through stores for exercise. Pretty common. But then since the crash, she's required a wheeled walker to ambulate. She reported even with the walker, she's lasting only 10 or 15 minutes before she has to rest. She never used a walker before. She now avoids stairs completely. When stairs are necessary, her husband and son have to support her. And then she started crying during my interview because she couldn't attend activities that she was doing every day, like cooking, cleaning the house, doing laundry, even personal hygiene. So, and then she said the quote, and again, in these interviews, we get a lot of these kind of important quotes. She said, I can't even stand without assistance for 5 minutes. Now, this was not her before the crash.
Right.
So that all builds into the narrative. Now, kind of jumping back up to the way I structured this one, I included some evidence in peer-reviewed literature about side impact motor vehicle accidents, and specifically what happens during a side impact motor vehicle accident. And then ultimately making the opinion that within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, due to this crash, she had trauma to her spine, which caused this new low back pain and stark reduction in function. So then I went on to kind of build that narrative. And this is where, in building the narrative, because again, we are consultative pre-trial, pre-litigation consultants, I included verbatim notes from her actual treating doctors, who, as we know, often don't want to be involved in the legal process. And these are all supporting the conclusions that I draw. And that was only related, this was all related to her back pain.
Mike, would you talk a little bit about the fact about how this affects people over the age of 65 and the type of fracture she had to her vertebrae and so forth?
Absolutely. So I had this highlighted. I just got, I think, too excited to keep moving through. But I found this, what I call one of my awesome articles that is down here, that is in the Annals of Emergency Medicine, that specifically, I mean, read the title, Persistent Pain Among Older Adults That Are Discharged Home from the ER Following a Motor Vehicle Collision. A prospective study, which means they prospectively looked at the impact of motor vehicle accidents on elderly people. And it ultimately found that the most common, they react differently. They experienced a decline in physical function, a new impairment of ADLs, and a decrease in their self-rated overall health. And this is in people that were sent home. And I drew the conclusion in here that this woman sustained shoulder fracture, hip fracture, and had very serious injuries. Imagine the back pain, low back pain suspected in this elderly woman, because again, it's just back to common sense, right, Armin? You're 68 years old and you get swiped from the side and total your car. That person is going to respond differently than a 25-year-old.
Right. They're more susceptible to things like compression fraction of the vertebrae and so forth.
So is that what you were getting at as far as this woman? You can highlight that? Okay. So then jumping down to her arm fracture, this is the second part of this case. She had a shoulder pain, ongoing shoulder pain, which is what the attorney wanted me to really highlight. And I believed it was from a rotator cuff tear. Now you could imagine, and I got the data that showed whenever someone fractures their humerus, there is rotator cuff injury. my attorney doesn't have the medical training to make that connection. So what I believed after talking to her was that you'll see it at the end, I recommended that she go see a shoulder specialist about rotator cuff injury, because in addition to the fracture, the soft tissue of these rotator cuff muscles were probably injured.
Right. So you were able to add your medical opinion.
Exactly.
The fracture of the arm bone, where it connects up with the shoulder, was going to affect her rotator cuff, which of course affects so many of her functions using that arm. In fact, didn't she have to switch arms?
Yeah. So here, the research that I highlighted said the rotator cuff injuries in patients with proximal humerus fractures is found in 40% of these patients. So, and she was never worked up for a rotator cuff tear, which can be difficult to find. So she really needed a directed MRI. And so, again, I shared the narrative. Since the auto crash, she reported, I can hardly use my left arm for anything. I had therapy after the accident, but my shoulder's just gotten worse. I can't even pick up a gallon of milk, which I was easily able to do beforehand.
There you go. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then again, back to making my opinion, reasonable degree of medical certainty that she sustained a severely splintered, which is in the medical record, and then subsequent shoulder pain and a significant decline in her left arm function. And then back it up with the verbatim notes.
Right. And unfortunately, this poor woman had other injuries as well.
She had her left hip fracture that was ongoing, even though it was repaired. Her left hip pops in and out all the time. So we know these things don't just magically disappear. And so I concluded that she reached maximal medical improvement related to her left hip, and she's going to, suffer left hip pain for the rest of her life. And next, one of the more exciting areas that we get to discuss is where we can offer our opinion to what future medical care would look like and what the costs might be.
Right. So we're going to render our medical opinions with regard to future medical care and the cost of that care in every one of these kinds of reports.
I just threw that link up too. If anyone's watching, again, if you have a case, you can feel free to email us at this comments@physicianshelpingattorneys.com or call us. Be happy to talk to you about whatever that is. And also, so in part of the future medical care, we really, and we talk about this in the podcast, but you teach doctors how to do this, and you taught me how to build these suggestions and form these opinions and do the research where we lay out what future medical care looks like.
Right.
And, so just starting this off, I made my opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that based upon the above injuries, we're on page 8 of 10, that these costs are then based on life expectancy of 20 and a half years at age 66. And I used a calculator, the Social Security life expectancy calculator, to define that. And I made recommendations. One thing is that she visit a new pain management specialist to reassess her joint facet and compression fracture injury that was to the spine and was a new injury.
Right.
She had back surgery, but the degree of her ongoing low back pain, we're not sure if she'll ever be able to ambulate without a walker. I mean, she's 66 years old and not a very good candidate to recover.
Right. So just to jump in, so this is the narrative part of the future medicals, and that really spells out the thinking that goes into our medical opinions, right?
Exactly. And I'm realizing this Car Crash Wednesday may be a little bit longer because we're just introducing the medical summary report, whereas in the future we might, for those, bear with us, we're not going to go through exhaustive detail on all of these, but this is what we want to look at once a week and all the different injuries that are out there.
Right. So then go down to that chart and let's take a look.
Yeah. So shoulder pain, recommended an MRI, expecting joint arthritis, physical therapy for 20 weeks, spread across the next 3 years. Treating physicians will all prescribe various medications, testing, and imaging. And then we include this handy dandy graph to estimate what these medical expenses would be.
And that is a whopping total.
Well, it's realistic, Armin. And you told me, and I tell my attorneys, if I give them some outlandish number, it doesn't help them
Yeah, sure.
because it has to be realistic and justifiable. Why don't you share? I've been doing a lot of talking. Why don't you share how we find these numbers?
Sure. So there are several ways that we can do this. So obviously, on the left-hand side of this chart, those are our medical opinions with regard to the future medical care, and the right side are medical opinions to a reasonable degree of medical certainty or probability of the cost of those things. So how do we do that? Well, first, we can always get a curbside consult from one of our colleagues. Hey, here's the situation. What do you do for that? What do you charge? Also, we read tons of medical records, just tons of medical records. And so we keep our own files on what are the treating doctors in each region doing for the treatment of various conditions. Also, we always try to back up these opinions with evidence from the medical literature. So for just about any kind of injury or trauma or even a disease, whatever, we can go to the medical literature and find a good current summary article that summarizes the current treatment for a particular condition and can rely on that. And then there are physicians practicing this kind of medical legal consulting all over the country. We do have a network of them. I've personally trained about 1,600 physicians around the country doing this. So we can also go to our colleagues and talk with them and get a consult with them with regard to how we put this together. And based on that, now, obviously, we are not certified life care planners, right? And sometimes we just have to have a certified life care plan. But for most of these cases, what is effective is for us to put something like this together to a reasonable degree of medical probability. And it's something that the opposing, you can work in a negotiation, work out with opposing counsel, with insurance adjusters and so forth.
That's exactly it. So I'll be honest, I think goal accomplished if someone didn't know that this tool was available for settlement, negotiation, and demands. I feel like we wanted to get this tool out there that these are being used successfully by the attorneys and just share a specific case. And then, are you up for doing this once a week, Armin? Try it out for a few weeks. Do you like it?
The thing, Mike, is we would love to have your questions during these live sessions. When we do the podcast, obviously we can't take questions on the spot. So we would love your feedback and love your questions during the course of our live show here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's it, Armin. I think we did it.
All right, great. So if you have...
hold on. We got our first question here.
Oh, great. Okay.
Jennifer, I'm actually going to pop it up. The technology is unbelievable. Look at that. So Jennifer said, I'm just going to read it because
sure, go ahead.
Do you sign the report? If so, then your name is available to the parties in settlement conferences. If the case does not settle, do you end up in an expert witness role? Do you want to take that, Armin?
Sure, yes.
You've been doing this for how long now? Please
15
clarify.
years. Yeah, 15 years. So,
okay.
Of course, we sign our reports. And our reports are certainly not behind the scenes. So are they available to parties in the settlement conference? Well, it's we work for plaintiff and claimant attorneys. So our reports go to the claimant and plaintiff attorneys. So it's up to them what they do with it. But it's not, our reports are almost always seen by opposing counsel. They're almost always seen by insurance adjusters. They are often seen by judges, treating doctors, IME doctors. The attorneys often share our reports with their clients and with others. But that, of course, is up to the attorney that hires us, how they use these reports. But these reports are specifically designed to help the attorney to better settle and negotiate and settle the case. And then the last part of your question, we don't act as medical experts. We act as medical consultants. So we're answering any kind of medical question that comes up in a case. Now, in those maybe approximately 1 or 2 out of 10 cases that can't be negotiated and settled, and then will go to trial, we can help our attorney clients to find the appropriate medical experts if they don't have one at their fingertips. Not too long ago, I did a case. It was a malignant melanoma case. It happened to be a standard care review I was doing. And my base of information for that I worked off of, I used other parts of the literature too, but was in a textbook. And so I got the physician who wrote the chapter on malignant melanoma in this textbook he was in private practice in Milwaukee, and he wound up being the medical expert in this medical malpractice case that was going on in Denver.
And so, I would add, and I don't know if I'm phrasing it correctly, but because we're not a treating doctor, we're merely a consultant that's compiling the medical record, offering our medical opinion along with the research and verbatim notes. There wouldn't really be a role for us to be deposed or serve as an expert witness. We're merely functioning in that pre-litigation, pre-trial phase, and also at a very reasonable rate that's concordant with that type of assistance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question, Jennifer. Thanks for watching today. All right, Armin, I think that's all we got. Let's call it a wrap for today and pick a new case for next week. I already have one in mind, by the way.
Oh, great. So if you have a question or comment, you can email us at comments@physicianshelpingpeople.com. And if you would like to discuss a case,
it's actually physicianshelpingattorneys.com.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, the whole title of the podcast is Physicians Helping Attorneys Helping People. So I condensed it. So it's physicianshelpingattorneys.com. Or if you have a case you'd like to discuss, you can email us there, or you can give us a call at the number on your screen. So we really appreciate your tuning into the show today, and we look forward to seeing you on future shows of Car Crash Wednesdays.
There we go. Have a great day, everyone.